6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by the Full Press Coverage Network and CanucksHockeyBlog.com. I'm Chris at Lightforce, joined virtually as always by Anna Forsyth at A4Say03. She is hot like fire.
Gonna have to call HR again, Chris, I think.
Well, we were talking about the ambient temperature, so you did say it was hot and that you needed fans to help cool you down. So I'm simply implying the temperature. What did you take it as?
Yeah, no, the temperature, that's right. Yeah, it is hot as balls. It is Vancouver in the summer.
Okay, why are balls hot? Like, why is that the reference?
I don't know, it just is. It's, swampy
hot as
down there.
balls.
I don't know.
This episode has really gotten off to a great start. Like HR
already.
is going to be speaking to both of us.
It's
not good.
I also kind of work in HR, so that's not good either. Yeah, it's really warm. So please take care of yourselves out there if you're also in a warm climate. There's people worse off than us in terms of the fires and all that. So please just stay hydrated, wear sunscreen, and wear clothes. Continue to wear clothes.
Is that a dig at me who suggested that when I went to pick my daughter up, I felt that clothes were a bad choice, but they were necessary because the worst choice was to get sunburned and
also be naked at daycare. So
that's okay, fair play. It's just the temperature out there is just obscene, and it's not like I don't know what clothing I wear that doesn't immediately start to cause like that, that friction when you get that sort of humidity, and it's just not comfortable. Like, I don't know, is it supposed to be like you're supposed to wear like, linen? Is that it?
I don't know. I'm struggling between, like wearing like as few clothes as possible but then that doesn't actually help. You kind of want to wear like baggy pants and stuff like that.
Yeah, right. Like it's that sort of weird space where there doesn't seem to be a right decision, but the one that you've made is obviously
it's definitely the wrong one.
It's the wrong one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, this is going to be an episode. It is like dead days in hockey. Though the Vancouver Canucks, did make us a episode to talk about, having made their first deal in August in forever.
Yeah.
It was like 8 years or something like that.
Oh, yeah, I think so.
August deal.
It was a long time. So we were like shocked, but at least we have something to talk about. Yeah.
It's a podcast season. So in this particular case, the Vancouver Canucks, potential captain candidate, he went talking on a podcast. So we're going to talk about that.
And yeah, that's basically it, because that's all there is to talk about. But that's summer for you.
Yeah. Anywho, let's dive into Rewind. Now, before we get into the Vancouver Canucks news, we learned today of the untimely passing of Maple Leafs first-round draft pick, Rodion Amirov. It was announced, I believe, just over a year ago that he had a brain tumor. And only a month or two ago, a coach of his had said that he was making good progress. Things were looking good. So it came as quite shocking news that, someone so young has, passed due to just an awful, awful illness in the sense of cancer.
Yeah. Cancer's indiscriminate. It's really cruel, and someone at the peak of physical fitness and healthy lifestyle is cruelly taken far too young, far too young. So life is really precious.
It is. I think, we've talked about it on our show in the past, and we'll say it again. never pass up the opportunity to, to give that loved one a call, give them that hug, connect, because things happen. In this particular situation, obviously with Roden, he received a diagnosis, as you had said, in the peak of his young career and young life. In fact, I wouldn't say it was the peak. He was just getting that opportunity to start to dive into it, and it took him so fast. So our thoughts are with his family, and with those that knew him best. As we alluded to in our intro, the Vancouver Canucks decided that it was time to make themselves a deal in August, and they've signed a player, a Suter, in fact. Now, if you were to think, oh, really? Well, yes, but it's Pius Suter, and arguably a reasonable signing at a reasonable price for a player that provides the Vancouver Canucks depth in a position that they have had a issue with over the past few seasons, that being a center. When you saw the signing, what was your initial thought there, Anna?
Yeah, I was just pleasantly surprised, I guess, one, that Canucks made a smart signing in terms of positional need at center depth. Obviously, they have the top two lines kind of locked up in terms of center. But yeah, that seemed like a smart and good value sign to me. And it is kind of funny. I didn't even think about it till you just said that. But Ryan Suter is literally the epitome, almost the poster boy for bad money contracts, right? Mm-hmm. He was one of the first that had the huge money, $10 million per year contract, and not the person is like the complete opposite, but he's seems like pretty good value, like, and short term. We love that.
Yeah. The deal itself, it's 3.2 over the course of 2 years. So his cap hit is a 1.6 million per season. He's actually coming off of a contract that paid him close to double that over 2 years. So definitely a pay cut. But when you think about the Vancouver Canucks in the old regime, a bad Suter deal would have been the type of Suter deal that we would have seen them, bring on board. Whereas this one, to your point, it's a very good one. You've uncovered a player that makes your team better. Now, does it significantly push the needle? Maybe not, but you're not sacrificing a significant amount of money in acquiring a player who more than likely is going to do the job well, and do it in such a way that provides you flexibility throughout your lineup. The bigger question, though, has more to do with the fact that the Vancouver Canucks have not made any further adjustments to their salary cap situation, and presuming all players who are currently healthy and considered healthy make the starting lineup, and those who are currently thought to be unhealthy find themselves in LTIR, the Vancouver Canucks will have about $1 million, give or take, in space. But that, again, is not the type of situation you want to have your team in at the start of a season. You want to have that greater flexibility. So I think there is another sort of nail that needs to be either pulled out or hammered down and to fit something like this, which is 1.6 into the lineup.
And you've got to think also, yes, you think there's going to be one more move at least in there, but that really talking about nails in the coffin, like Tucker Pullman, Tanner Pearson, they're not coming back anytime soon, right? Like you kind of got to think, even, I think we kind of thought that before this deal was made, but like there's not much space in the cap to move them off LTIR, and Tanner Pearson maybe is closer than Tucker Pullman, as in Tucker Pullman may never play hockey again. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it does make you think that that's kind of not going to happen anytime soon at all, which is extremely sad for Tanner Pearson especially.
Yeah. But I mean, again, this will be an issue that will probably discuss at some point next season, unless more were to come to light with either of the players' injuries. But let's use sort of what you had discussed moments ago in the likes of Tanner Pearson potentially returning to the lineup. The way the collective agreement is written, once a player is healthy, they must be taken off of LTIR. Mm-hmm. Now, we know the league has historically allowed many players to be on LTIR and retire them by finding their way to Arizona. Not going to say that this is what's going to happen in this particular situation. But we've also seen the Vancouver Canucks as the one team in the modern era get punished for salary cap situations. So I suspect that the Vancouver Canucks will see no friends in the league office and need to have something else lined up. Like there's this rumor that Tyler Myers is not going to be a Canuck at the start of the season. The first thought was, it was a bonus situation, which was holding things up. Well, that I don't think is the case anymore. The Canucks have paid that. So if there is a deal, what's holding it up? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, not that this would ever come out of cap, but maybe another cost to pay down the line too. Got to think if Tanner Pearson is done, that really he could be suing the Canucks for mismanagement. Like that could happen.
Yeah, but I'm not trying to downplay that because it's obviously a serious issue. But that type of situation's a bad situation for the team that doesn't impact the cap.
Yeah, just another cost situation for Francesco. And terrible situation, I hope, mainly for Tanner's sake, that it doesn't work out that way.
But with the addition of Pius Suter, not Suter.
Yes, I know.
Speaking of Suter,
I know.
He's getting a PTO. But no, Pius Suter, Vancouver Canucks have 5 centers currently. I mean, that's including the likes of JT, Bluger, Dries, and Suter and PD, I guess, as well. That's just main roster players.
Jackson Nika played center.
Well, okay. I guess, yes. So Stunica, and then, from there, you've got Neil Zoman, who plays center. I mean, Sasson had come up, but Aturatu.
Yeah.
But again, there's a lot of centers, not a bad situation.
No, not at all. Would you see Suter jumping the queue and slotting in ahead of Teddy Bluger on that depth lineup?
I suspect he probably would. And then you have Bluger down on the fourth line.
Yeah.
I always look back to when the Vancouver Canucks had success down the middle of the ice. And that was when they would have a 2-3 in the 3 spot and a 3-4 in the 4 spot, where you had that competitiveness or also the depth structured in such a way that should something occur to the guy ahead, the one below slides right in and provides you adequate service.
Yeah.
If not better than that. And that's something the Canucks have lacked. They've lacked that on the blue line. I mean, for argument's sake, they still do. But they've also lacked it up front, down the middle of the ice. So I like the deal, and I do think he finds his way into the third line.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think it's going to be a real balancing act of, one, how do you spread the lines in terms of, is it a first line of your 3 best players who play well together? Or, do we spread it more like where the second line gets a bit of a boost from a player that could easily play top line minutes? Then when you're looking at the bottom of the lineup, it's like, do you have a balance of skill and toughness at the bottom there? Or do you really pack that fourth line as a hard-hitting defensive kind of line? I don't know. Like, Suter obviously has a lot of defensive capabilities, which we maybe haven't had at center for quite a while, so.
No, it's a good problem for the Vancouver Canucks to have and find themselves in. One of the things that we also then have to start to consider is what will that lineup look like? And you had mentioned, like, is it about playing the three best players together, or is it about putting players together who play well together? I'm of the mindset that you put the players who play well together as a line, as opposed to the best, because the best doesn't always gel. And maybe that's why the Lotto line wasn't the Lotto line a lot of the time.
You like that wordplay, didn't you? Yeah, I think that's the thing too. That's why I'm struggling to put together a lineup, because I think we'd love to see Kuzmenko and Petey play together again, but there's Besser playing on their wing. Besser plays really well with Petey, but I'm sure a lot of people would love to play with Petey, and maybe Beauvillier. Whilst it's arguable who's if he's top line material.
Well, I mean,
but
the words from the head coach weren't too kind to Beauvillier near the end of the season. Like, here's a player who came in and provided you the output that you were getting from Bo Horvat, and the coach is like, I don't like his game.
Yeah, it's tough.
Right, so
it's tough under Tocchet.
Right, when the coach ain't happy with you. And again, we don't know if there's more to that where I'm going to say this and I'm saying something different. And this is just to simply reinforce what I've said, privately. We don't know. We don't know how the player responds to it, but it does raise questions like, okay, well, where does he slide into the lineup? Is this a player that's still, a piece of the puzzle in the coach's mind?
Yeah.
Beauvillier is not cheap.
No. But at the same time, like, along that right wing, it's beginning to look a little bit like our center problem a while ago. Like, I guess you put Besser there if you don't put Beauvillier there. Is that what we're saying?
I think so.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I
mean, I
buy it.
The season.
Yeah.
And then, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say then it's a question of, is Mikheyev back, and is he fighting fit? That's a big question in my mind.
Yeah. I mean, the thought was he would be.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard much more than, he's progressing well, but then progressing well could also mean your career is done in the eyes of the Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah,
so.
When do you ever hear anything different? Yeah, we thought Tanner Pearson was progressing well until he turned up with, his arm.
RoboCop arm.
Bandage, yeah. So.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm curious, obviously, how things will pan out. We had a month until training camp. Training camp obviously starts to shed light as to what the Vancouver Canucks will start to deploy. And even then, it's still in the early days. It's more, a bunch of guys fighting for jobs, split squad games and what like. But we are getting to that point that hockey season is fast approaching, so much so that the Vancouver Canucks spam me every day to say, hey, do you want to buy some tickets?
Yeah, they think our weekends are very empty.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I found emails that, I had no idea how the Canucks have that email. It's like an email I've never used, but I found it.
They found it, and they think all of us have a lot of cash just to start dropping on the team. It'll be interesting. I think this is an indication that the team is realizing that they are in a space that people are not as jazzed about, and they'll need to do something well. Okay, you're reacting to something. You got an email from the Vancouver Canucks.
Literally as we were recording.
See? They listen to the show live.
We're ready.
That's how big CFAR happens to be. Oh, anyhow, we'll take ourselves here a short break before we go into half full, half empty.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on it.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He didn't play. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
You're still listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by the Full Press Coverage Network at CanucksHockeyBlog.com. I just thought I'd shake things up because, one, I forgot to say it on the transition out, but two, does it really matter? You know who we are, and I just,
hopefully,
but share who we're brought to you by.
Someone stopped listening, and then it was 2 days later, and they were like, "Oh yeah, I was listening to a podcast." What was
and I got to a
again?
natural break. Could have been that. You're right. Speaking of listening to podcasts, did you happen to listen to JT?
I listened to JT. I didn't listen to the rest of the podcast because it was 3 hours long.
You're allowed to do podcasts at that length? I mean, in fairness, a lot of the mainstream media that transition into this space totally do, because they're accustomed to how they create that content.
Yeah,
you and
it's
I,
like radio show.
Yeah, we just, one, don't have the time, and two, even if we did, I don't know what the two of us would be able to talk about for that length of time, just on our own.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's not... I don't know. No one wants to listen to that. I mean, clearly enough people do, but you got to think a lot of people are skipping through. But yeah, JT Miller was a guest on Cam Strick podcast. I'm doing that from memory. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right.
Cam Strick. I think I just went stick because of hockey.
Oh, okay. Well, it didn't. It sounded right to me.
Yeah.
You're right, Cam Strick.
Yeah, it's two people, not just a person and a stick. Yeah, I mean, I skipped through a lot. I don't want to cast aspersions because I really didn't listen, but it didn't seem like they were my kind of people that I wanted to listen to their opinions on sport for 3 hours. They were incredibly interesting. And when I say interesting, I mean sycophantic. I know it was a big get, I'm sure, to get JT Miller, but just the sucking up was crazy,
Well, to use the words of friend of the show, Chris Faber, who wrote an article on Canucks Army, he recommends listening to the episode as Cam and Strick do a great job making players feel comfortable and opening up. But, by the way, we transcribed a lot of Miller's quotes here for you. So, in fairness, Faber's saying, yeah, they do a good job at making the players talk. But to your point, it's a long episode.
Yeah, so I would skip forward. I think it starts about an hour and a half in. Is it anything shocking? Is it anything we haven't heard before? Maybe not really. JT has more time to go off, but it's kind of the same things we've heard from JT for a while, right? He's all for effort. He has high standards and he expects everyone to live up to those standards. He does skim over quite quickly when he himself fell short of those standards, not back checking or whatever it was he did, just giving up on plays to make Luke Shen yell at him. So I will say that he doesn't take a great deal of responsibility, if that's what you're looking for from him, but he's honest about, how he sees the game. And yeah.
Well, and what he sees of the North Shore.
Yeah, I know. It does, I did have a moment there when he was talking about, they asked him who he hung out with, and it took him a long while to think of someone. But then he did say quite a few players. But he's definitely the lone wolf out there, living that West Van life.
Yeah, he, on the hockey side, as I try to, derail us here, he was asked about all of the trade rumors, and he acknowledged that, things got really worked up, but they were just rumors that, GMs and his agent didn't say anything, though he understands that when a few big names in the East start talking about it, it really takes off. But he didn't, point out that the big names in the East are hard to deal with. No, it's just Vancouver media. Not all of them, many of them.
I know. It was interesting. I think he, not by name, but singled out a couple. I think that's an oxymoron. Anyway, he said that there were a couple of people that he really doesn't get on with, and they know, it goes both ways, or they're well aware of how that works. I mean, I just wanted him to get more in depth on that, not to be naming names or anything, but just like if they had interviewers who are more interested in getting to the nub of the issue, just like dig into that, because it is a hard market to be in. Like, no one's saying it's not. Canucks fans, Canucks media are very interested.
Yeah, he does go on to talk about the fans as being positive. I mean, to his point, they can love me, they can hate me, but I'd rather that they love me or hate me than not care at all. He acknowledges that obviously Canadian fan bases tend to be a whole different crowd. And with the situation with Vancouver, he acknowledges, like, look at what the fans have had to deal with over the past decade. I think he said in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
I'd be pissed off too, which for me, I actually like hearing a player acknowledge this, because how often will you hear ourselves, us as fans, oh yeah, the players, you're bringing them down. JT, to his credit, saying, no, I totally get it. I don't necessarily agree with all of it. I don't necessarily like it, but I get it.
Yeah, I agree, because and I did like that from him, because I think we've had some negative comments from him from the past about, like, people wanting me traded, like, and kind of seeing that through a wholly negative lens, when I think it's a huge compliment, because the only reason people wanted him traded rather than re-signed was because they thought he was excellent and we thought we could get a good price for him. Mm-hmm. So it was not to discredit him at all. So I thought, like, I liked that he was more holistic about it and seeing the whole experience that Canucks fans kind of have had. And obviously he didn't make any mention to, like, the way the team was run.
Well, I mean, he didn't,
no,
but he talked
in relation to the fans, but he did. Yes, you're right. He did talk about, like, the way, Bruce Boudreau was handled. He talked about
great human, just a wonderful human being, and that's just to see how it was on him. Like, I can't get into this, but let me describe the person. And I mean, I think there were questions that the room doesn't respect Bruce. I honestly, hearing someone like JT, like, oh man, how can you not feel for this guy? And he talked about other coaches. He talked about his time in New York where he got Torts, and then he got Vignola, which we both know here in Vancouver, and how, Tocchet is just, it's wonderful having a coach like Tocchet, which, I think we've heard so many people say, oh man, Tocchet's going to go and it's going to shape him up. That's the type of coach he is. Well, apparently if JT needs to shape up, he's either found his shape or we're all wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I
Bruce
earlier about him abdicating responsibility, which I do stand by, but, like, if he's, like, responding well to, like, coaches like Boudreau, but especially like Tocchet, like, then I think that's a good thing, that you can, respond well to criticism and exacting standards. Mm-hmm. So that gave me some hope. I did find it funny that they never once, like, they had spoke about for quite a while about Vigneault and never talked about, like, him in Vancouver. Like, yeah, like, they love him in Vancouver, or he had a great record in Vancouver, or there was quite a few ex-Canucks or, like, players, coaches that they never thought, like, to tie back to be like, yeah, well, of course they came from Vancouver, or they went on to Vancouver. But
yeah, the question you'd asked me earlier about sort of my thoughts on the Miller interview and what he said, and you had mentioned has he said anything that isn't already known or anything that's not new? Probably not, but he was candid in the conversation that he had. He didn't really shy away from anything. And when we think in the broader sense of just players in these interviews, I much prefer hearing from a player be genuine to that effect, whether I like what they're saying or not, right? Like, that we get the sanitized, these are the magic words I must say, full of cliche, and that matters so little to me. I could care less if you gave it 110% and fought hard in the corners and played a strong, two-way game. I could care less. I can see whether you did or you didn't. You acknowledging it with a cliche doesn't help me understand. What helps me understand is hearing those thoughts, and we don't have a lot of that. We get more every so often. I mean, with Vancouver, like Kevin Bieksa, sort of as a player, as he became a leader, became a little bit more open, but you also have to acknowledge he wasn't the guy at the top. The guy at the top was much more within control. I think PD, if given the opportunity, might be the type of player to provide personality. But then there are those who are like, oh, I hate it. My goodness, the guy needs to focus on the game.
Oh, yeah.
Like, to me, why we as fans don't want to hear this? Like, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah. So I definitely agree with you that, like, hockey players in general are pretty boring. And I agree that we shouldn't be, like, snapping at a guy who's just honest and frank with the way they speak. I do think, you know, it doesn't give honest players a free pass, right? It's still, like, we can make a comment on, you know, if a player says something that we don't agree with, I think, and I know you're not saying that, but I feel like that comes out every time a player says something kind of awful and people respond and you say, oh, well, you're always complaining that hockey players are boring, and now someone said something and you react badly.
Well, that's not
a conversation that happens, though.
No, but it's also not the same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's like, oh, you're always complaining that they're at this extreme. So when they drop that extreme, you get all upset. We're not asking for extremes.
That's it's like such a good way to put it. But in general, like, I appreciated, like, there's things that I took from it. There's things I appreciated him saying, things I didn't necessarily agree with. But I do like players coming onto podcasts. Maybe if they came onto, you know, if it happened more and more, there'd be some really interesting things coming out. And
well, I mean, but the challenge here is it's also not the player's call, I think, in many situations, right? The team has to be on board, and
it's a whole culture shift that needs to happen, right? Just we've talked about it before, but it kind of feeds into this whole culture of a murder, right? Mm-hmm. You know, don't say anything. Don't, like, tell the media how injured players are. Like, his upper body. Like, he has
what are you talking about? It's a body injury.
Again. Yeah. Or, you know, like, what happened on the ice there? No, nothing happened. We're all friends. It's fine.
Yeah. It's surreal because, and I'm going to use a North American comparison with the NFL. I mean, the NFL is not a perfect league. It has many problems in its own right. But, you know, they give their players an opportunity to share that personality, injuries. You pretty much are shown the report that the team gets from the doctor, right? Like, there's a greater level of detail. And again, I'm not giving the NFL a pass here because they don't necessarily treat their players with any respect when it comes to their health and well-being. I mean, there was a player that was just this last week cut by a team during the preseason because they got word he was injured. Like, it's like, okay, you're done. We've used you. You're done, because contracts aren't guaranteed in the NFL.
Oh God, that's kind of awful.
Right? Like, I mean, it's like,
yeah.
But to the point that
you mean.
Trying to raise is that it's a hockey thing.
Mm-hmm. And I do find it funny because this is just a sidebar, because it's just like in football, in the Premier League, like, it's wild to me that you can get away with just being like, this player was signed for an undisclosed fee for a long time. And that's like all the news you get on a contract. Like, you often hear about transfer fees, but you often do not hear about how long a player's contract is. Like, I can't imagine that ever happening in hockey. And obviously you've got the cap and everything to measure up.
Okay. But cap friendly. We were talking about cap friendly before we hit record, and it's not like the NHL gives them that information. Those that are behind cap friendly, and, you know, Cap Geek, the you know, rest in peace, Cap Geek. They worked hard, to get this data. It's not just here you go. Whereas, again, using something like the NFL or Major League Baseball, where the league announces These are the details.
Yeah, that's true. I just to go further off the rails, but like it's absolutely wild to me that like there's players in baseball that get cut during a doubleheader and can go play for another team.
Well, so baseball's collective agreement is all sorts of crazy. But you're right. Like you could have, so think of it like with the Vancouver Canucks, they could have so many players on the bench, right? For the game on the roster for game day. Mm-hmm. Baseball's the same way, but you don't play double headers in hockey. So what happens is if a player needs to be inserted, another player has to come out. But then you can only carry so many players on your roster. So you have the bench, you have like the press box. And when that occurs, you now need to move. And because of the way a player's contract is structured, kind of like waivers, they could be designated for assignment, or they can be essentially, as you say, cut, which is not actually what's happening, but the team has to essentially forfeit their rights for any other team to take.
But if you were playing a doubleheader, two teams could switch 2 players, and they could still play against each other in the second game.
No.
Okay.
Like
that was a story that was told on something on a podcast or something.
I mean, I guess it's possible. Like there have been times where teams have traded players, but I don't believe that could happen because the problem there is the amount of time it would take for the deal to be like consummated and then signed off on. Yeah. And the time in between a doubleheader is likely not going to be sufficient. But again, I'm not an expert with Major League Baseball and their rules. So
I just was reading stuff about it this week and it just seemed bonkers. I mean, in the Premier League, if you have a player on loan, they literally can't play against their parent club for the entirety of the season.
Well, but that's like, again, the on loan's different than a trade. Like,
no, it is. But like, yeah, also, you can be cup tied. You can't play for 2 teams in the same competition in the same year. That's mad. But, sports, contracts, madness.
Yeah. Speaking of madness.
Yeah.
This happened since we last recorded. Again, it's been a few weeks because we had our sort of, every couple of weeks, and then we had a holiday, so we took that off as well. So it's been a few weeks since we last recorded. The Quebec Major Junior Hockey League has banned fighting. Right.
Yeah.
And there's people who are mad about that. Lots of people.
When somebody please think of the children.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting though. I saw someone say like fighting's banned in the NHL too. Like, of course it isn't, but like they're both just things you can't do, and you get punished for doing them.
The punishments vary.
Punishments vary, and like 5 minutes major is very different from being banned from the. Would you be banned from the league? What happens? So
in the Quebec Junior Hockey League, if you throw it, it's very similar to Junior B and sort of youth, where fighting is a game. Like you drop the gloves.
It's just a game injection, right?
Just the game. So it's a game misconduct. Now there might be if you get X number of game misconducts, there's subsequent punishment. What have you? Like that part I don't know, but I would imagine something exists. But it's not like, oh, you threw down your gloves and you're out of the league.
Right. But so it's not like it's just like a greater punishment, and that's what you have to do. You just have to shift the culture bit by bit.
The thing about this though is that we're not talking about a professional league. We're talking about kids in a junior hockey league. Like, so if I am to understand those who are very upset, they're drawing a line in the sand that once you reach a certain age, it should be expected that you fight on demand. Or command, because culture, code.
And I have heard people just, of course, there's an entertainment like part to fighting in the NHL. Like even someone like me opposed to fighting, there's times when you get pumped up by it. But I just don't feel that way about like junior hockey, and I certainly feel like it's the flaws in the system of the NHL that makes fighting such a big part of it.
Yeah. One of the other points that people raise, oh, look at all the dirty stuff that's going to start to reintroduce itself into the game and make the game even worse than it is today. I actually don't disagree with that sentiment because there is some probably fact to that.
Yeah.
However, that's not fighting's problem. That is the officials and the leagues enforcing the rules that exist today that allow for that to occur. Now, I'm not suggesting that things don't go miss. Like, you got 4 officials on the ice and they will miss things. This is going to happen. We're human. Sometimes we don't see things quite right. I mean, that will occur. But how many times will you see a referee look at something and not make a call because of, where it occurred in the ice, what time of the game it occurred in, the players that were involved, because game management comes into play. And it just drives me nuts that is somehow the reason that fighting has to stay in the league. Like, give me a break.
Yeah. I mean, don't come at me, firefighters, if this is an incorrect analogy here, but it's like saying don't put out wildfires because we'll get smoke pollution. Like, you've got to deal with the problem, and then that doesn't mean you don't deal with the problem of officiating and inconsistencies there. That means you just it's making moves to protect younger players, because there's so many players that there's plenty of reasons why young players don't make it, but some of them it's because they can't, injuries force them out of the game. And it really can be pretty life altering, even at a young age. The
other part of this is then the slippery slope. Oh, if they're going to do it here, they're going to take it out of the NHL and the hockey, all the fans will leave. Well, I actually, don't believe that's the case. I've spoken on this show how the NHL has reached, I think it's sort of peak of where they can get their sort of, traditional fan base, and they need to expand it beyond that group. I believe there is a good segment that view fighting and that's, barbaric. It's not necessary. It's beyond the pale, but I would accept that the NHL can't simply make a decision tomorrow and turn that off. But one thing they could do is apply a rule that exists in the books already called the instigator penalty. If players knew that penalty was going to be applied, there are far fewer situations that fighting will occur because no one player wants to be that one pulled out of the scrum. Now, and I have no problem if it's a staged fight, if both of them instigated it. Yeah, go take a break. You're done, right? I think you take that step to socialize that, hey, look at what happens in the game. Let the players play. And when people say let the players play, that's what I think we all want. We want to see the game decided on the ice through the skill and the finesse of the players themselves.
Yeah, and the NHL has been getting faster and more skillful for a long time, but there's still more ways it can, move quicker towards that. And one of them would be, heavier penalties in terms of fighting, consistently applied, not fines, because fines do nothing, but game bans for more egregious faults, and in terms of fighting. And you just want to see the stars get protected, because it's not just... it shouldn't be up to the players to do that.
And I'll use soccer as an example here. I know there's probably some listeners of our show who are like, soccer drives me nuts. Fair play. Not every sport's going to be for every person. But what happens if you accumulate 5 cautions over the course of a period of the season? Accumulation of cautions results in a 1-game ban. What are you guaranteed to miss when you get a red card? The next match. Doesn't matter. And there's going to be a conversation as to whether or not that is sufficient.
Yeah.
And often, if it was a straight red, that one is probably not going to be sufficient. You're probably going to see a multi-game end. And if that happens, a couple of times in the season, that match ban, it goes up exponentially. So I feel like, and I'm not suggesting you apply what happens in soccer in hockey, but you have structure to say, hey, you have the choice. And if you make it, you understand very clearly what the implications will be. This equals that. Whereas like right now, to your point, like what does the Department of Player Safety do? They roll the wheel of justice out. They give it a spin. The players themselves don't know what the punishment will be, right? There's no consistency there. And yeah, they'll be told what it is and then they'll get the explanation after. But because that is so up in the air, players roll the dice and like, well, I could probably exact justice.
Yeah. I mean, like we said, it's like one thing won't work for every sport. Like they're supposed to take into consideration if the player's a repeat offender, i.e. had an accumulation of yellow cards. Like that's supposed to be part of their punishment. Is it? Sometimes, not a lot. But like, I don't know what the solution is with the Department of Player Safety. Like we want consistency, but how do we get that? Clearly transparency isn't the answer. They explain every single decision they make.
The decision doesn't seem to line up with what it is that we on the outside see. And it's not just us as fans. Players say much the same thing.
Yeah.
Right?
So
like, we get it from all sides.
Like rugby, the transparency really seems to work. Like you can hear the refs and that seems to be like
everyone gets to watch the replay as it's happening up on the big screen.
Yeah, you hear what the refs are saying and like that seems to help.
Yeah.
But football, VAR has not helped. So,
well, okay, but in football, soccer, I mean, there's going to be some like, oh, well, look at what that happens in soccer. Everyone dies. You know what? Soccer has got its own problems, but I feel that they have ways to, like, when was the last time you saw someone cautioned for simulation? When it's quite clear it was simulation. Like,
yeah, not enough. I mean, that's what I loved in the FA Cup final when, I forget what Chelsea player, but they got a second yellow for simulation, got sent off in an FA Cup final. And, like, that was great to see because, football has its own problems with game management.
And, this is, like, I would almost address the caution for simulation in soccer very similar to the instigator penalty in hockey, right? Like,
just actually use it.
If you put it to use, it'll be amazing how that change will drastically alter the flow of what is taking place.
Yeah,
will it solve everything? I don't know, but it would be worth a shot to give it a try.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about, this is somewhat related in terms of like concussion. That's still a huge issue in the NHL. We don't think it's necessarily dealt with the best way, but they have concussion spotters and they have a like equivalent of a head impact assessment. Like, do players still have too much power to decide if they go out there again? Yeah. But like in football, you're just going to get to go out there.
Oh, you may not even be taken off. Like,
yeah.
There was I'm trying to think. I think it was in the Leagues Cup, which is the Liga MX versus MLS teams. And there was a match where a player took a knock, like in slow-mo replay, you can see head got only point of impact as well as in the air on the ground. When the player got up, so I can maybe say the referee isn't entirely sure what's occurred there, but when the player gets up, there is a complete stumble, like not with full control of their faculty in that moment. Did the referee call for a trainer to have that player off the field, off the pitch? No. Keep it going.
Yeah. And there's like cricket's the same. Like they do have a concussion assessment every time they get hit. But there's been players that have gone on to keep playing and then had to either go off later that day or the next game for concussion. So, hockey is like one of the leaders in that, even though it still has a ways to go. But yeah, they really, I think, applying the rules that they have, applying punishments consistently and during the game, all the way to the end, all the way through the playoffs, And after the game, in player safety is kind of a good place to start.
Yeah, I agree. And hopefully you, our listeners, do too. But if you don't, that's okay. But we would love to hear your ideas that can enhance player safety and longevity of players and ultimately their lives to be improved.
And even if you don't care about players, like, what do you think would make the game more entertaining, more skillful, and fun to watch?
Yeah, I mean, if it's fighting, well, let's give up the goals. You know, have the players line up on the ice. They all get a dance partner, and last one standing wins. There's no draws.
Yep.
Have you seen the movie Bloodsport?
I haven't.
Oh, it's not related to hockey at all. It's a Jean-Claude Van Damme martial arts movie.
Okay.
But essentially, if you watch the movie, you'll then see the reference that Chris got and involved in the podcast and be like, yeah, don't want to see that.
Yeah, I don't think I do want to see the movie. I'm sorry.
It is all sorts of like corny and violence.
Yeah, I mean, it's Jean-Claude Van Damme, but yeah.
So here we are, end of a show. We are getting close to a season. I believe we had talked about kicking things off. We'll have next week off, but then the week after is when we'll go back to our weekly format.
Yeah. So if there's stuff you want to see throughout the season, stuff we did last year, stuff we maybe didn't do and you'd like us to do, as we get into our regular coverage, like, let us know, please.
Oh, I lied. It's actually because the 4th will be a holiday, which will take off from the 11th of September onward. We'll back to our weekly format. But yeah, I mean, this season is going to be an interesting one if you happen to be a Vancouver Canucks fan, because, well, can't be any worse than last year, can it?
No comment.
So if you happen to check out our website, c4podcast.com, you'll notice it's broken. I shouldn't be left in charge of website design, but the widget there that allows you to listen to our back catalog as it exists with the Full Press Coverage Network, you can see. That's part of the problem, is that in the transition over to the original network, which was Overtime Media, they did not import our full catalog. I still have it. It's just a matter of getting a website in such a way set up to fix it. You also know that there are ads on our show, and we don't get a penny of them.
So
that goes directly to our hosts. Yeah, skip. Have no problem with that. But if you did want to support our show, the easiest way to go about doing that is to go to support.c4podcast.com, which takes you to Buy Me a Coffee, or as Anna and I call it,
Buy me a pint.
And you can commit to either a one-off donation to allow Anna and I to go out and enjoy a pint or two on your behalf. You can also commit on a monthly basis. And as well, there's an annual option. And if you were to commit annually, it's actually a little bit cheaper than if you were to do it on a monthly basis. And at some point in time, I will mail you a sticker. I can't find them. And if you could see the chaos that is behind me, you could probably understand why. My wife and I finally got rid of our storage locker, which we had been paying for after we had moved into this townhouse. But the problem is that in having it at least allowed more of the stuff that we didn't need there, it's now here. So the chaos that Anna sees grows. It's like the clutter gets it on and creates more clutter each and every time we record.
I've heard it does that. But yes, once the stickers are found, we will have a sticker mailing party and we'll be sending you some stickers. Yeah. They're cool.
So, any final words of wisdom for all of our listeners there, Hannah?
Like we always say when we have to sadly talk about some not so great news, just life is precious, hug your loved ones, and yeah, that's it.
I concur. So on behalf of Anna, A4603, myself, Chris, at Light Force, signing off this episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast with We Out.